on December 16th, I went to this area where this youth has gone, but was missing, where she went missing. And no police there, nobody responded.
Tonight, the Nishnawbe Aski Nation ramps up the pressure on the Thunder Bay Police Service.
As far as we're concerned, it's a broken treaty promise.
Plus, chiefs from Treaty 4 launch a class action against the federal government. And the annual First Nations Snowmobile Expedition is well underway in northern Quebec. Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Savannah Kelly. Policing was one of the topics that came up at the annual Nishnawbe Aski Nation Chiefs Assembly today in Thunder Bay. NAN represents 49 First Nations in Northern Ontario. Also on hand was Ontario's Deputy Solicitor General. Chief Christopher Munias from the Nishnawbe First Nation raised his concerns over the recent Thunder Bay police response to a missing 14-year-old girl from his nation who was found deceased days later.
Right throughout that time we were doing our searches. On December 16th, I went to this area where this youth has gone, but was missing, where she went missing. And no police there, nobody responded, nobody came to see us, nobody came to see the family. You know, that's how Thunder Bay, that's how we get treated here in Thunder Bay. There's no response, lack of response, and there's not only in Nishnawbe. It's almost for every community that comes here, every citizen from NAN that comes here. We get mistreated. There's no response. We don't get the respect. What are you prepared to do to Thunder Bay Police to make sure they are accountable and responsible?
Deputy Solicitor General Mario Di Tommaso responded to Chief Munias. He said a new entity known as the Office of the Inspector General of Policing will be up and running by April 1st and will have substantial powers.
So in the situation that you described, Thunder Bay is not providing said service adequately and effectively, and it is not acceptable. So based on information that the Inspector General of Policing would have, that Inspector General could launch an inspection and an investigation on Thunder Bay Police and then issue orders to the Thunder Bay Police Services Board and to the Thunder Bay Police Services to improve service delivery with respect to the complaint that has been made.
In 2019, APTN Investigates and APTN National News introduced you to Stephen Moren. Moren was sexually abused in the Alberta child welfare system for almost 5 years. This trauma has led Stephen Moren to drug abuse and ultimately to robbing pharmacies looking for drugs. APTN's Chris Stewart spoke to him about how he's turned his life around after the birth of his daughter.
Stephen Moren did not have a happy childhood. At just 5 years old, he was repeatedly sexually abused by his foster father until he was 9 years old. A foster father who had a previous conviction for possession of child pornography. He should not have been a foster parent. He carried the emotional trauma into adulthood. Moren sued the Alberta government for his decades of suffering. But the process of legal action forced him to relive the sexual assaults all over again.
I went through abuse, and the PTSD that I was going through and the traumas from opening up Pandora's box, you know, all that flooding into my life, man, it's no different than a soldier coming back from the war.
The trauma led Moren to turn to hard drugs, methamphetamine and crack cocaine. At the beginning of 2022, at the lowest point in his life, he robbed 6 Edmonton pharmacies to feed his addiction. He was not immediately caught. In May of 2022, he settled out of court with the province. His share was $312,000. Most of that money went into feeding his drug habit. A bad business investment took the rest. In February of 2023, he was arrested for the pharmacy robberies, facing 18 charges. Moren has pled guilty to 2 counts of robbery and is awaiting sentencing. He could spend 2 years in prison. Moren is hoping for house arrest and probation. He says the birth of his daughter has changed his life. He is now clean, with another girl on the way. He has a job, a truck, and a home. He says the robberies were due to PTSD from his trauma combined with addiction.
That was not me. That was that was a person that was lost. That was a person that was lost and like mentally and like spiritually. The soul was not in that person no longer during those events, and like, you know, 3/4, if not 99% of these events that took place, I can't even recall. I can't even recall a single second or 2 or 3 consecutive seconds of any minute, within any minute of any of these events that took place. I can't remember a single moment.
He says he regrets the mental anguish he caused the pharmacists from his actions.
I'm disgusted with myself, to be honest with you, because I hurt someone. I know how PTSD affects an individual, and when a person like a pharmacist goes through what they go through, an event like those events, man, I can't even find the words to say, because there's no words to apologize to them. There's no words I can find. It's words are just words. Actions speak louder than words, and I wish I could just, if they are watching this, I just really want them to know that I really am sorry. And I hope that they still find their enjoyment with their career.
Moren is waiting for his Glad You report to be finished before he will be sentenced. He's ready to do his time. Then it will be up to him to maintain his sobriety. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Chiefs of Treaty 4 territory in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba have launched a class action lawsuit against the federal government for not living up to some of the terms agreed on when the treaty was signed in the 1870s. The terms of the treaty, signed in 1874, included payments made every year to each member of the bands who signed Treaty 4. The claim states payments were made initially set up at $5 per person, which was a great value in the 1870s, but not adequate with today's inflation rate, according to the suit. The chiefs say the Crown has failed to increase the payments over the last 150 years to reflect inflation. Nishnawbe Nishnawbe Nation Chief Derek Nipanak says the suit is meant to benefit individual band members.
As far as we're concerned, it's a broken treaty promise. The $5 is merely symbolic today, because you can't buy anything with $5, and it certainly does not create, you know, an economic backstop for Indigenous families who, you know, continue to have significant challenges within the treaty relationship that we're supposed to have.
We want to hear what you think about the Treaty 4 class action lawsuit. Here's how to continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. June 21st, 2023 was a day for Métis people to remember. Bill C-53 was introduced in the House of Commons. This past Monday was another step forward as the bill made its way out of the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Committee. Our reporter Rachel May has more on Bill C-53.
Every Métis and the governments that are representing our people have a right to be able to determine their own future in regards to what they would like to see.
Bill C-53 allows certain Métis governments in Alberta, Ontario, and Saskatchewan to give effect to treaties with these governments and make amendments to other acts. President of Métis Nation Saskatchewan, Glenn McCallum, says it was a long road to get here.
Always goes back to Riel in regards to what he believed in 1885. When the last stand was made in Batoche, believing that his people were self-determining, which he was right, correct, and to believe that we can govern ourselves, which he was right.
McCallum said that this bill addresses jurisdiction and citizenship. He hopes that the government sees the importance of sitting down with each individual province to figure out their unique needs.
That is so key, that the honor of the Crown and the responsibility and obligation of the government is to be able to work directly with us
Bill C-53 will now return to the House of Commons for a third reading and vote. If it passes, it will be sent to the Senate. However, First Nations in Ontario strongly oppose the bill's passage into law. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
A First Nations Snowmobile Expedition in Quebec is bringing healing, connection, and reconciliation. More on that after the break. Welcome back to APTN National News. The First Nations Snowmobile Expedition 2024 is midway through its 3,200-kilometer arduous journey that will end in Meshkanu territory in northern Quebec. This second edition is more festive than last year's and includes various activities geared at uniting the different nations. Maricela Amador has the story.
With only the sound of snowmobile motors, one can still find serenity in this natural beauty.
Des kilomètres et des kilomètres comme ça, là, comme aujourd'hui, là, le sentier était tellement beau, c'est une ancienne traque de chemin de fer, là. C'était droit, là, fait que c'était endormant, là. C'est ce que j'ai trouvé ça dur.
Poirier is one of 54 other participants, including Indigenous and non-Indigenous. This is her first time participating in the expedition. She said that the journey is all about endurance and teamwork.
Un coup de main à la gang qu'on est.
But it's also not without its hardships and challenges.
J'ai la main engourdie, mal au coude, j'ai de la misère comme à contrôler mes mouvements là.
Because injuries, accidents, and mechanical issues are common occurrences. After leaving La Belle-sur-Quevillon, Bruno Ouellette experienced this firsthand when his snowmobile broke down mid-trail.
C'est de la mécanique, même si c'est une 2024 flambant neuve. Il y a eu un petit problème. D'après les autres motoneigistes qui connaissent ça un peu plus que moi, ces modèles-là, ils disent que c'est la pompe à gaz qui serait défectueuse. Donc, ils ont rapatrié ma motoneige chez le concessionnaire.
Luckily for Ouellette, his wife is also part of the expedition. So he rode with her until they reached Picogan, 600 kilometers north of Montreal. The expedition travels with a paramedic team at all times and a helicopter on standby in case of major emergencies. The days are long and fatigue sets in very quickly.
C'est des grandes journées que le manque de sommeil, des fois ça finit tard. On finit, moi, on se couche à 10-11 heures, on couche des matelas gonflables dans des gymnases. Tu dors pas. On est 60, là, toutes dans la même pièce. Là. Fait qu'il y en a peut-être un ou deux qui ronflent.
Moi, quand je suis descendu, là, il restait 3 personnes. Il y avait moi, ouais, Julien, puis la titre. C'est tout ce que j'ai vu.
On the leg towards Picogan, Florian Dubé got separated from the team.
J'ai arrêté là. Il y a pas longtemps après, il y a la police qui arrive, la SQ. Là. Et là, je demande à la SQ, je dis, avez-vous vu mon groupe? Je dis, non, t'es le seul. Là, je dis, ça va, je vais faire chicaner, oui.
So Dubé ended up waiting at a rest stop with provincial police until he was reunited with the rest of the team, and they were off. This expedition is also about reconciliation and healing. Police officer and first-time participant, Anik Wild, is from Picogan. Under the cover of darkness, she led the expedition into her home community. Their first stop was to visit Cindy Rupert House's family.
La dernière fois qu'on a vu Cindy, moi, c'était en juillet.
Wild embraced Rupert House's sister. 44-year-old Rupert House disappeared in 2014, leaving her family devastated. Wild was a childhood friend of Rupert House.
Les skidos, là, tout ça, la randonnée, c'est grâce à eux autres que l'histoire se promène. Puis c'est connu à travers du Canada.
The expedition will come to an end on February 10th.
Je le fais pour le groupe, la cause et tout. C'est une belle gang qui s'amuse, puis un beau temps d'arrêt là, dans nos vies qui va super vite.
By the finish line, they will have completed over 3,200 kilometers. Maricela Amador, APTN National News, Picogan, Quebec.
People now only have 1 month left to submit a claim under the First Nations Drinking Water Settlement. Eligible First Nations communities and individuals have until March 7th to apply for nearly $2 billion in compensation. The $8 billion settlement is between Canada and certain First Nations and their members who are subject to a drinking water advisory that lasted at least 1 year. For more on the settlement, we're joined by Darian Basketdown, who is the Class Action Counsel. Thanks for joining us, Darian. Can you give us, our viewers, a brief overview of how this $8 billion settlement came to be?
Absolutely. So how it came to be, so this First Nations Drinking Water Settlement is a significant milestone for Indigenous communities in Canada, finally addressing years of neglect from the federal government for its failure to provide and fund safe drinking water in Canada. It came to be because 3 different communities decided enough was enough and came together to sue the government of Canada for its failures and that for the harms that they've committed onto people simply for living on reserve without clean, safe drinking water. And so we launched this class action in 2019 and in 2021 settled it and then got started on the claims process. And we're roughly 2 years in now. March 7, 2024 would be our 2-year mark and be the close of the first claims period.
And roughly $2 billion of that is for compensation. What is the other $6 billion for?
Absolutely. So the big win of this class action was not in compensation, $2 billion in compensation. What's the other 8 or 6, sorry? So the big win wasn't compensation, but rather the money that's there now to realize what safe drinking water in communities should be. So that $6 billion is meant for money to go into well-needed infrastructure in community, whether it be funding water treatment plants at actuals for the construction, upgrades, operations and maintenance, and so forth. It's to bring about safe drinking water in communities so that they never have to have boil water advisories or even do not use advisories ever again.
And for the compensation side of things, who's eligible for compensation and what kind of compensation would they be looking at?
Sure. So people who are eligible for this class action to be an individual class member are First Nations members who lived or ordinarily resided on a reserve on an impacted, let me restart that. Individual class members are First Nations members who've ordinarily resided on a reserve on an impacted First Nation between 1995 and 2021. Now, there's some confusion around that because a lot of that will depend on your birthday as well. So if you're like me, older than 27, there's a good chance you'll fall between our eligibility limitation period, which is typically between 2013 and 2021. And so even though people might have lived under a water advisory before 2013, depending on their birthday, they may not be able to claim for compensation for that period. And now in terms of what people can expect between $1,300 to $2,000 per year that they're eligible for, that they lived under a long-term drinking water advisory.
How much money has been paid out and what happens if there's some left over after the deadline?
Gotcha. So I'm not too sure on how much has been paid out yet, but I do know that we've paid out roughly 15,000 claims since August of last year when we started adjudicating and paying out people. Since then, since last August, we're now at a much higher cadence. We're paying out more and more people every 2 weeks. And so timeline to payment will vary based on when people submitted their claim form. And in terms of if there's money left over, we don't expect there to be money left over. We expect to be able to distribute all of this compensation to the individual class members that have gone without safe drinking water.
Great. Well, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for taking some time for us today, Darian.
Excellent. Thank you for having me, Savannah.
For more information on how to start your claim, go to firstnationsdrinkingwater.ca. And again, that deadline is March 7th. This year's Juno nominations are out. We'll tell you about the Indigenous nominees after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Enjoying a blazing fire out in South Lorraine, Ontario. This great picture was shared with us by Davey Bowers. If you want to be featured as our photo of the day, be sure to email your photos to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting off on the East Coast, 0 degrees and sunshine in Fredericton and St. John's. Kuujjuaq -14 and Nukjuaq -18 and sunny. Val-d'Or 5 degrees there, Montreal rainy and 2 degrees. Toronto 5 degrees there, North Bay +6. Kapuskasing rainy and 4 degrees, Sioux Lookout +3. God's Lake snowy and -4, Thompson -13. Barons River +2 there, Gimli snowy and +1. Regina flurries and 0 degrees, also in Saskatoon and Yorkton. Stony Rapids snowy and -15, Meadow Lake -4. -6 and snowy for Peace River and Grand Prairie. Edmonton snowy and -4, Medicine Hat -2. Penticton rainy and 3 degrees, Bella Coola +2. Prince Rupert rainy, 3 degrees there, Smithers -4 and sunny. Watson Lake sunshine -16 there, Dawson snowy -19. Norman Wells -17, Wattie snowy and -17 there. Paulatuck mix of sun and cloud -14, Tuktoyaktuk -24. Cambridge Bay snowy -26, Whale Cove -27. Arctic Bay -22 there, Resolute sunshine and -26. From polar bears to turtles, check out the dazzling nature photos in the Wildlife Photographer of the Year People's Choice Awards. This stunning image of a young polar bear sleeping on a drifting piece of iceberg has won the top award. The picture was captured in Norway and was chosen from a shortlist of 25 other photos. Other finalists include this turtle that looks like it's smiling at a dragonfly on its mouth, very cute, and this flock of birds morphed into what looks like a whale. Very cool stuff, definitely photo of the day quality for us as well. So, several First Nations artists have been nominated for the 2024 Juno Awards across quite a number of different categories. Nominations for Contemporary Indigenous Artist or Group of the Year include Oji Cree artist Nishnawbe, Inuk singer-songwriter Alyssa P., and Mohawk singer-songwriter Shawnee Kish. Indigenous artists are not just confined to their own category. Haisla rap duo Snotty Nose Rez Kids are nominated for Music Video of the Year, and Micmac folk singer-songwriter and fiddler Morgan Toney gets a nomination in the Traditional Roots Album of the Year. Nishnawbe is up for 3 awards in total. Besides Contemporary Indigenous Artist of the Year, he's been nominated in the mainstream categories for Songwriter and Alternative Album of the Year.
To see so many Indigenous artists like nominated this year, I don't think, I think it's just representative of the talent out there. But it's like really incredible to see a lot more Indigenous artists like nominated in different categories now as well.
The 2024 Juno Awards ceremony will take place on March 24th in Halifax. Best of luck to all the nominees. And that's all the time we have for your Wednesday news. For news anytime, head on over to our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Savannah Kelly. Marcy Miigwech, thank you for joining us. Have a great night.